Hello there, Verbal Shenanigans fans, listeners. When was the last time you had a real challenge in your fantasy sports league? Are you bored with the stale and mundane redraft league year after year? DynastySportsEmpire.com understands, and that's why they are the nation's leading Dynasty League management company. Building a team from scratch is easy, but building a dynasty takes skill. Manage your roster with the same players, compete against the same teams, build fun, exciting rivalries for years. DynastySportsEmpire.com fantasy baseball season is heating up, and leagues are now forming for the upcoming season. Visit them online at DynastySportsEmpire.com to start building your future franchise today. Must be 18 years or older to join. Rules may apply, but that is DynastySportsEmpire.com. We have a fantastic episode for you today. I'm excited to bring it to you, so strap on in.
Hi, it's John Palumbo from Crack the Sky, and you're listening to Verbal Shenanigans.
But our shenanigans are cheeky and fun.
Yeah, I mean, his shenanigans are cruel and tragic.
Which makes them not shenanigans at all, really. Evil shenanigans.
I swear to God, I'll pistol whip the next guy that says shenanigans.
Hey everybody, hello, how's it going? Welcome back to another installment of Verbal Shenanigans. Mike, how are you doing? You look refreshed, you look Disney-fied. How are you feeling?
I'm doing well. I mean, vacation was good. Weather, for the most part, stayed pretty good. Kind of got hit the second I got back to work with a bunch of stress, but other than that,
that's how it goes.
It's how it goes. It could be worse. It could be in Texas with like 20 degrees and no power right now, so I can't complain.
So how many weeks now do you have the counter running at home, like till the next Disney trip?
I know the wife keeps the counter. I know it's kind of close. It's like the last week of March / the first couple days of April.
Wow.
So.
Now they're basically twice per 2 months, really.
Yeah. Now we have quarterly audits of Disney now. So, we just go in there, check their cupcakes, and head back home.
Did you encounter any your last Disney trip, you happened to, one, you were kind of on Dirtbag of the Week level, but two, you also encountered some really interesting people from our one of our favorites, Oxygen Lady, and some other ones along the way. Did you encounter any strange beings at the Disney resort?
I guess there would be one that could count that. First off, the person in question we went with on the first trip, we kind of made extra sure she didn't know we were there, so we didn't have to worry about certain,
well, surprise, surprise, she's coming on the show right now. Hello, Vanessa, the line cutter. How are you?
No, but it's kind of funny. I put up the picture of my wife to say happy birthday, which in turn led to her direct messaging my wife just, hey, how's it going? We haven't heard from you in a while. Miss you kind of thing. If one of those, she kind of figured out we were in Disney and realized we did not make her aware of said trip. But I guess the only character in question, so they have a water slide at the pool at the resort we're at, the Grand Floridian.
Now, quick question. With like COVID era, do they make you wear masks in the water park?
You don't have to wear it in the pool.
Okay.
Basically, if you walk around, I mean, they're very nice, but they're very strict. And like the second you leave the pool area, if you don't have your mask on, to just be like, ma'am, sir, did you forget your mask? And
I'm just picturing like kids in the wave pool with their masks like soaking, and like they're just like
accidentally waterboarding themselves. Yep. But yeah, so it has a water slide, the pool at this resort, and I decided to go up there, and there's about like 8 people in line, and then there's this one kid that's at the top of the water slide, And there's like these moments where like people are waiting for the kid to go down, but he's not interested in going down. He's more interested in telling everybody how they should go down the water slide.
Oh, so he's like a coach, like a water slide coach.
Yeah, it would be like a girl be looking like kind of give the hand gesture like, oh, he's like, no, I'm not going. But you know what you should do? You should grab those rails, and when that green light comes on, you go busting down there. And like
but he had a passion about it. He
was like lifting his leg, going like this. He was very dramatic in how he felt people should use the water slide, but he didn't dare attempt use said water
So now,
slide.
what's the play there? Do they eventually be like, dude, you got to get down the slide, or does he just hang out there all day and sell the slide? Maybe he's like cheap employment for them. Like, yeah, like this kid really hypes that slide real well. Let's just keep him up there all day.
Yeah, there was no signs of his parents anywhere looking for him. He was just up there, and I think everybody was just like, well, I'm not going to be sitting up here. I came to go down the water slide, so it's just take our turn and keep going. But that kid, man, he really wanted you to like do specific, go down on your side, and that way you get a little faster coming down the turn. And
so the slide came with its own hype man, is what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, were you just disappointed after you went down the slide? You're like, man, that was not as good as the kid made it.
It was decent. I mean, it's a pool water slide, so it's not like freaking Wild Water Kingdom or anything like that. But it had some decent speed for like probably was like 10 feet in the air, maybe.
I haven't been on a water slide since we went on a water slide. Whatever that was, probably 5-6 years ago with when we interviewed Trevor Bain. I have not been on like a water slide. Oh, that's not true. I lied. I did go to Mountain Creek once with the wife, but yeah.
See,
that's the last
you could have retired. Like everybody, like, you want to go on the water slide? Nah, man, that will never equate to the time I went down there with Daytona 500 winner Trevor Bain. Now, if you can match Trevor Bain, I will go down that slide. And then my hype kid will come out there. Yeah, you're not Trevor Bain.
I feel like water parks are either like really fun or really like draining. Like, there's nothing worse than I remember water parks like as a kid when it's just overly crowded and like it's hot and you're like completely dry and in line on those high like steps, and you got to carry some big hot tube. That's
exactly.
And you're just like bumping into people and your feet are hot and like there's just you start getting like I used to almost start getting scared when you get real high because there's nothing like water dripping and it's only just like steps. It's never like super secure feeling at a water park.
No, and it's just like a quarter of an inch extra space, and you always get like 5 or 6 people who come down the same way.
Yep.
Like, I'm not doing it. And it's like, I can't freaking move. I don't know where you're going.
Yeah, like water parks could be the most fun or like really awful because like the goal is to get wet and cool off, and then you get like a hot day, and you got that yellow tube melting too, and of course you got to carry it if you're going with your wife or whatnot. They're not carrying it up the stairs, and I don't know. I also feel like a lot of creatures always come out at the water parks. You always see like the dudes in jeans, jean shorts, and you see like some really interesting families coming out to the water park.
I remember I was in somewhere in Pennsylvania with some friends, and we were at a ski resort that kind of does like a water park during the summer, and you can tell they aren't like the greatest made slides on the planet because it's like, oh, you have to go down with like your arms crossed and blah blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, so I go down regular way. At the end of the day, my elbow skin was like gone, like because there'd be like pivots in the slide and it would go in and I guess it would just scrape it enough. Like the day be over, I'm like, why do I have a gallon of blood on my arm?
Every time I picture you saying that, I picture Danny DeVito going down the slide in Always Sunny. They go on the slide that doesn't have the water yet. But
classic episode, by the way.
Yeah,
classic episode.
Yeah. They still pump out like. They still pump out like if it's a season of 10, they're pumping out 5 good ones in there, like 5 really good ones, and then there's always like 2 really bad ones lately, and then there's like a couple like, but they're still pumping out good content, and they got another 4-year deal or something like that on the table. So God bless.
I mean, they work things out. Like even saw an article with the guy who plays Dennis, where he talked about like that cliffhanger when he was leaving. He literally said, I was leaving. I was burnt out because he loved the show, but he basically figured out that he didn't have enough energy to do the show and do side projects that he wanted. So it started getting to him where it's like, now I'm just kind of stuck on this one thing and I want to try other stuff. Because he's a really good actor. Like if you saw him in Strangers and AP Bio, he can diversify himself, but
it's so funny with the Sonny guy, and with D and everything, Caitlin Olsen, seeing them in other roles and Charlie in other roles. There's still, it's so funny because there's still like a hint of, that's Charlie, like in all his roles, like D in the Mick or whatever. I tried watching that. I'm like, she's basically just playing D, and and Dennis even in like I watched a couple of those AP bios. I'm like, there's still a lot of Dennis in this character. It's funny because there's still, I don't know if that's on purpose or that's just kind of who they are as they act too, but you could definitely, you're like, that character's still there. It's like seeing them in like a spin-off almost.
Yeah. But he kind of said he literally just went up to the guys and said, guys, I got to stop doing this. And they were really cool about it. And they basically went into that season and thinking he was going to be out of it. And basically, they contacted him where they said, we're getting stuck on a couple things. Would you be interested in just coming in and acting, and we'll do the writing? And he jumped on that immediately because he's like, acting is the easy part. That's the fun part. It's the stress of writing and going through that. And then he said it was almost like a refresher because then he came in and looked at stuff. He'd say, all right, let me rewrite a couple of my things or whatever. And then it got him kind of super stoked where he was in it, but he wasn't full on, and he was doing his own thing. So that was kind of interesting.
And I feel like there's no expendable characters of those 5. I feel like that show, you can't lose one of them because the dynamic is the 5 of them. It's just the atrocity of the 5 of them all the time.
Well, they kind of said that the key thing was with Dennis, he's kind of more the straight man in most of the episodes. And you kind of need the guy who just says, what on earth are you talking about?
Right.
You know what I mean?
He puts them all in place.
And you look at the other 4, maybe D at best, but pretty much everybody else, it's like, you can't say Frank. You can't say Charlie.
No.
And you can't say Mac. So.
Yeah. It was funny the other day I was talking to a friend because I told him, we got a really cool episode of the podcast coming out next week. Not to overshadow this one, of course, but
no.
So when we had started this show, we had jokingly made some I don't know, like some Mount Rushmores, like people we'd love to talk to, and we started with a spreadsheet or whatever. And I was saying, we got one of them coming up, and then I had Sean Kemp on the line. I did talk to him for 15 minutes, and he vanished. But I was like, then there's like that tier 2 of people I would want to talk to, and I was like, any one of the cast members of Always Sunny would be on that next if Mount Rushmore expanded to 8. One of them, I would just love to talk to one of them on the show. Any of them, any of the 5.
Who do you think would be the easiest to get on of the 5? I'm thinking Mac.
I was going to say Mac too. I was going to say Mac or Charlie. Frank, obviously the hardest, I would say. Danny DeVito. But I have met Danny DeVito. I did meet Danny DeVito. He did a vodka release at the liquor store that my buddy Mike worked at years ago, and we went and met him and took pictures with him and whatnot. I definitely think he was bombed out of his mind, which was pretty cool. Because I don't want sober Danny DeVito. That's I want.
I can't fathom they looked at him. It's like, you represent our vodka. You know what I mean?
He probably put it out on his own.
Why are we doing this? It's like, it's Danny DeVito, and he's going to get hammered, and it's going to be fantastic for everybody who shows up for it.
I'll tell you, that guy is a national treasure, though. The day Danny DeVito goes, that is a devastating. We always talk about celebrity deaths on here, and we've had the conversation many times, ones that actually bothered you and ones that you're People die. The day Danny DeVito goes, I think that's going to be oh man, like there's a guy who was just kind of did it his way his whole career, like kind of, and to see him like dive into something like Always Sunny and just enjoy it and like kind of not do anything else really. Like he kind of just does that. You could tell he's just you could tell he's just doing what he wants to do, which is always cool. But yeah,
so you're saying if Danny DeVito goes this year, and I say, Scott, are you bringing back him or Rush Limbaugh? There won't be a big debate.
No. I would love to talk to Rush. I mean, he's probably got a lot of amazing stories about being on the radio. You can't discredit everything the guy's done. He did hold. As we sit here and struggle to find listens and outlets and things like that, there must have been a reason he gathered an audience. Yeah, maybe it was through racism and outlandish conspiracy theories and everything else on the sun. But the guy did find a job every year on multiple different platforms. So I would talk to Rush Limbaugh.
Do you think we can contact the AM radio stations and see if that spot is still available right now?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Speaking of that, like I had one of my notes for the show, and if you have we didn't even introduce the show, but if you're tuning in, this is Verbal Shenanigans, episode 346 or something like that. But we've been doing this for a long time, and one of the things that we always talk about with Mike is like, you try to promote the show, and I swear to God, there's no science to algorithms anymore as far as social media. Like, I cannot figure it out. I'll post this really cool guest we have on that I'm like, man, this is going to get like a lot of people going, oh crap, oh my God. And then it gets like 11 likes or something like that. I'm like, oh, cool. Then last week, great episode with Leland Sklar, bass player from James Taylor and Phil Collins, and basically over 2,000. It's funny because I went to Spotify and I typed in Leland Sklar, and the playlist came up of all the songs he's been on. Dude, it is incredible. Like the amount of like the pop hits that you would have no idea. Like even like modern day hits. Like it's just hit. But anyway, like I post his picture. I always do a little promo picture, and bam, like 100 like people like, I love Leland. Oh my God, like Leland. And all these, like, I noticed a lot of like Spanish names liking it. Like, I have no idea. It's like the one time we posted Christian Okoye, and all of a sudden we had like 8 million people like from Nigeria just being like, oh my God, which makes sense. The Leland Sklar one, no idea. No, like, listen, I know he's an amazing musician, and I know he was one of my favorite interviews so far this year. But the rhyme or reason behind social media, I am completely, at this point, I have no idea. I posted a video the other day. I don't know if you saw it. I posted a bit I did about Valentine's Day and Victoria's Secret or whatever. Put a video up. It's like 11 views. I'm like, what? Like, why is this not getting any views? Like no one sees it. And then like everyone who saw it, and like, not to toot my own horn, was like, oh, that was really funny. Good job. Like, but I'm like, I want people to see this thing. How do I do, like why is like one joke I post get a bunch of likes, or if I post a picture of my baby, tons of likes, and then you post something else, nothing. Just completely nothing. No one sees it.
Whoever actually knows the science to it, God bless them. If you can send us some notes, but like we joke around like the first few like months of us doing a show together. It's like you hashtagged anything,
yep,
and it equate to like people seeing it and listening and giving likes and stuff like that.
That's funny. One point, Twitter was our sweet spot. Like Twitter was, you were doing most of our Twitter stuff and getting a ton of reactions, and our listens were like going through the roof. And then like that faded off, and then Instagram was working really well for us for a little while. As far as anything I put up, I was getting all sorts of people following us, and oh my God, cool. And then that faded off. It's like, what? I don't know.
There's no rhyme or reason. I mean, obviously there's other stuff like TikTok and whatever out there, but like where it boils down to is unless you are able to produce the hundreds of thousands of millions of people to like your show and go on from there, all these companies, they do not help out. And it's just, it's almost sad. And it's one thing to say, if you need an extra boost, give us $5. And then like actually in some scientific way going, okay, this is what helps the boost. And by that, it's going to try to help you down the road. But it seems like even doing that, it'll be like, oh, it reached 200 people. And you're like, yeah, but nothing happened.
No result. No like, bumps. No nothing.
Equates to mega extra likes or watches. Nothing equates to mega extra likes on the next one. It's just they shut it down, and then it's impossible. That's why they're like professional social media people, because they can freaking get into that algorithm and know exactly, okay, I can hashtag this, but I can only do like 2 other more hashtags, and I got to come back in 3 hours and do another one, and this and that. It's a full-time job.
Yeah, and I personally think once they catch on to like that you're a podcast or a business or something that you're promoting, then the squash starts. Like I think like early on they're like, oh, it's just a guy signing up for Twitter or signing up for Instagram and sending things out. And then once they realize you're promoting something, then that big squash happens, because it's amazing, man. Some of the things I think that will be like, oh man, we're gonna get. People are going to be really cool. Like, things I post, like, people are like, you had them on? I'm like, I've been friends with you for 15 years. You know, we're real close friends. You didn't see that? No, never saw. It's like, damn. Like, I don't know. It is bothersome after a while. But it's like, if you, exactly like Mike said, if you do know any hints, please email us at verbalshenaniganspodcast@gmail.com and give us some tips, because especially leading into next week, I would like next week's episode to be like a big one.
Yeah, the only somewhat thing I've noticed, like Facebook, when I go on to groups, if I do like the picture, kind of like the one we use for Instagram, and then put the stuff and the link in there, then it kind of sees more than versus putting the link and just doing the regular description. But it still, I mean, I'm not saying that's the difference between 5,000 listens and 12 listens. It's literally like, oh, okay, I got a few extra likes on the way in there, so it's hard to even say, do they see the link that I put in there?
It was depressing. I put this video out, and the reason I put this video out was because, one, I had the idea a long time ago, and two, I had 4 hours, and I'm going to get to that story in a second, sitting in my house by myself with no one, no kid, no dog, no wife, and house kind of torn apart for construction. And I was like, well, let's make a little video. And I was like excited to put it out. I'm like, oh, this is going to be, fun. Like a lot of people, I don't post any of my stand-up really. So I'm like, let's throw a bit out there for once, like something I was kind of proud of, and then an hour after posting it, the depression starts sitting in, like, no one sees this. No one's even viewing this. Like, I can't figure out how to get it anywhere. It's so depressing. But what's really depressing, and I'll tell this story real quick. So in my house, we had popcorn ceilings in our living room, 70s style, ugly popcorn ceilings when we moved in the house. And I like to do work. I like to do it with my dad or whatnot. But the one job I didn't want to do was either A, scrape the popcorn ceiling, which is a disaster, or B, cover it up with sheetrock, because sheetrock sucks, It's messy, it's hard, it's heavy. So I actually hired a guy. So the day comes, I take a day off, and I'm waiting for the guy. He's supposed to be there at 9 o'clock, okay? What's your buffer on, like, servicemen being late? Like, where you start getting mad?
I give them 15, 20 minutes. I mean, that's kind of pressing it. I mean, one of those, it's like, all right, as long as I'm not like the first appointment, I can sit back and say, okay, one of the other ones went late, and none of these places have a system where it's like, oh, this job is taking longer. Please make sure the other appointments I got to go to are aware.
Right. So I was even more generous. I'm like, construction guys are always late. I was giving them an hour, right? I was like, okay, 10 o'clock would be okay. They didn't get to start, but as long as they have all the supplies and things like that. So the guy, I'm texting him like, oh, I'm here. I said that now, like, I prep everything. I move everything out of the living room. I cover things. I clear the driveway out so they could pull right in and, to bring the stuff in. I open up my garage. I clear space in them for them to cut stuff. And I'm like, everything's clear. You guys are good to go. 9:45. Oh, I had to drop one of my employees off. He had a family emergency. I could kill him right now. We're going to be a little late. Probably like 25 minutes, half hour we'll be there. Okay, whatever. Things happen. Hour goes by. Hey, guys, where you at? Oh, we had to stop at the Home Depot for supplies. Now, I had given the guy a deposit the other day because he said he was at Home Depot at the time, and he's like, if you give me the deposit, I'll pick up all the supplies. It'll save some time, and we'll be there earlier. So I'm like, okay, you had to go to the store. Okay, and I'm thinking, all right, let's still give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he had to pick up some spackle and some tape or something, like a couple other things they needed.
Maybe it's cheaper at True Value than at the Home Depot.
Exactly. I text him again, and I'm like, dude, where are you? It's like 11 o'clock now. Okay, and I'm not the most patient. Like, if there's one virtue I could work on and improve on, it's probably my patience. I'm not the most patient guy in the world.
Okay.
I think I'm kind and friendly and sometimes humorous, but I'm not like super patient, especially when you pay someone to do something and they don't come. So he texts me, hey, got pulled over. Something about I had the sheetrock on the ceiling, on the roof of the car, and had to take it down, have to go to Home Depot. I'm like, what? Another hour goes by. So I'm like, dude, where are you? Now I'm texting. Now, this is not like simple as just like me being home and being pissed off. This is, I had to take a day. Had to get the kid out, have my parents watch the kid because there's too much dust and stuff. Had to get the wife out. She took a day from work to be with him. The dog out of the house because he would go nuts during all this. So I'm getting pissed off. And he's like, he had given me a good quote and he came recommended. And I'm like, okay. So 1:30 rolls around. Let's cut through that. So meanwhile, during all that time, I'm editing that stupid video. Like, whatever. 1:30 rolls around. They show up. They do a bunch of work, and it looks pretty good for the day. And they're like, I'll be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Now, I had a virtual comedy show the next day at 6:30. And they were supposed to do a day and a half. They said it would be, like a 9 to 5 on Friday, and then like a 9 to like 1, 2 o'clock next day it would be done. So now they're like, oh, see you tomorrow at 9. Sure enough, the next day, late, where are you? Bunch of weird excuses. Shows up at 10:30. I'm like, okay. Now they're working through the day or whatever, and I'm sitting there like, there's no way they're going to get this done. Like, this is, it's not an extremely hard project, but it's definitely like time consuming. And I had them like put up molding too. I got like an hour left before I need them to get out to start the show or whatever. And they still haven't even like painted one side of the house, like the living room. And he puts up the molding or whatever. Whatever. I'm going to keep the story a little shorter. Long story short, they're like, we're done. And I look at it, it looks pretty good. And they're like, we'll just have to come back for some touch-ups or whatever.
Okay.
I'm like, no problem. That work. And now things are drying. It's dark out. You know what I mean? So, like, there's barely any lights on. So my wife comes home while I'm doing the show, and I go up, and she's like, I'm like, what's the matter? She's like, there's a lot of things. And I'm like, oh, no. And, like, almost that ego comes in, like, oh, I hired the guy, it looked pretty good. It's good, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, it's good, It kind of like not wanting to admit that things weren't great. Then the next morning, I get up. I always get up earlier, and I go downstairs, and I look around. And it's just like, they left 2 lights hanging out of the ceiling. There is, like, things that have to be sanded. There's screw marks. There's molding. There's paint, like, half on the ceiling, half on... Like, they definitely just rushed it and, like, did not give a crap about finishing the job correctly, and it's so disappointing. And now I'm like, you got to come back. I left messages on this machine, like, you need to come back. Like, I sent him a bunch of pictures. I had my friend come, who is he redoes houses and stuff, and he's like, man, like, he's like, they need to come fix this, and this. We can fix these things. And the point is, like, I paid the guy. They're supposed to do it. My dad came over. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't have done it this way. And it just sucks because it's like people, you hear these horror stories and you're like, man, I'm not going to get screwed. And like all the way along, I didn't like give them a deposit up front, like a big one. It was like a third, and a third, like normal. And like the work is just so shoddy and like so fastly done. Like me and my friend are going to rip the molding down this weekend, and he's going to redo it for me. And I'm going to pay him and buy new mold. It's just really disappointing. There's some real scumbags out there, man.
Yeah, it sounds, and like the worst thing of all is you always bring it back on yourself. I mean, there's no way you could have figured out who this guy was or anything. Somebody says it's good, you just go, all right. It's not like you're going to go, well, I'll take your word, but I'm going to do 2 hours of research before I go, yes.
I put it up on like the community Facebook page, was like, anyone have recommendation? And like 4 people recommended him. I'm like, cool. He came over, super nice guy. You know, he was doing good work, but it just, you can tell at the end they were just like, just get it thrown up there, we got to get out of here. And it's like, man, is that infuriating. Like, there's nothing worse than like shoddy work. Like it's like, especially like my dad growing up was like the biggest craftsman. You know, he did everything on the house by himself, and I'm like not a craftsman. And I wish if there was one thing I wish I did, it was like pay attention to my dad when I was a kid. You know, learn things that would be like, you know, skills that will never go away and save you $1 bazillion over the line. And it's like, I completely think this guy's never going to come back, honestly. And I think I'm going to have to fix it. And like, he was supposed to come back today, and there's snow, and I understood that. But it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just a really like, it's like a gut-wrenching feeling almost, like, and you feel guilty. I almost feel like I'm apologizing to my wife about it, like I did it almost. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know, man. I just, if you ever had that experience, it's like it's a real crappy feeling, like knowing that like you hired someone, they didn't do the work you asked for, and they rushed it and just they just like kind of threw you under the bus, like, you know, he'll be fine with it.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than the wake up and the realization when you go into bed and you're like, I guess it's fine. You look around, whatever, and then you just come back and you're like, oh God, no, and it's just a cluster F.
Yeah, and you know, it's like I said, there's a little bit of like an ego thing, right? Like you're like, oh, it's pretty good, looked good, and then as you see it drying and you see the things you missed, like it was just me, like, and I felt the guilt, like, I missed that. Like, why didn't I say something at the time? And it's like, oh, man. Like, I almost felt like it's my fault. I mean, I know it's not particularly my fault, but it's still like, this sucks, man. Like, this really blows. But,
yeah, I never had anything of my own house like that. I mean, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I will say the closest I had something equivalent to that, like when I had my old job in Jersey, we had so much work to do that the company approved a contractor to help us with some of like the phone work.
Right.
And, you know, we did the interview with the guy and he seemed like he knew his stuff or whatever. But then like we start getting into projects and we start slowly realizing like this guy was super half-assing it. Like, and I'd be like, all right, I want you to do this task, you know, not to get too technical. It's like add another phone cabinet to our phone system. And he's like, all right, I got the job. And then he would come up to my desk a little later and he's like, there's this guy who can do it for this amount.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, I'm like, no, I know you're capable of doing it because I know We're capable of doing it. I'm telling you to do it. And then he would, like we said, for once in a while you can work from home, just get into the network. And we're just realizing, like, days go by. We're like, where the hell is he? And he's like, I VPN in the network and did this and that. And it got to the point where we basically found out I sent him to another facility to do something, to do some research. And we didn't trust him, so I asked the guard to look at the security cameras. And he literally walked into the building, went into the IT room for 2 minutes, walked out, and drove home.
Yeah, these are the people you're like, this should be on your conscience, and this is coming back to you, man. Like they're like my brother got screwed really bad on a project last summer. I don't really want to go into that, but it's like these are the people. Like, you got families, you got people with kids, you got and this was the one project I didn't want to do myself. And I'm friends with like Craftsman guys, and my father, like, I didn't want to have my 7-year-old dad lifting drywall and doing all this stuff, or we could have done it, but it would have took a long time, and I got a good price. And, you end up getting screwed in the end, and I'm going to have to redo a bunch of it. It's just disappointing. But what's not disappointing is it's guest time. Let's get I know we're talking about drywall. Like, this this is a interesting transition here.
We're setting the bar high for our guest, Scott, man. He's got to beat drywall. I mean, I hope he's got what he takes.
So coming on the show is a man by the name of John Palumbo. And John is a writer, keyboardist, guitar player, musician for the band Crack the Sky. Now, Crack the Sky released their first album in 1975. Now, it's funny because last week with having Leland on, 50 years of experience, John, 50 years. I mean, we're talking, Berlo, 100 years of music experience in 2 weeks. And they're considered like one of the first prog bands. They're not quite prog. I consider them a rock and roll band. But they just released a new album after, like I said, 50 years. They've had a lot of work. But another new album called Tribes. It just came out on January 15th on Carry On Music. So we're going to get John Palumbo on the line. So here's our interview with John.
So how are you?
I'm good. How are you, John? Thanks for joining the show.
Sure, thank you.
John, where are you? Where are we calling you at right now?
Just outside of Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. So, John, I saw the email come across my, our little podcast email, and I see an email come out about Crack the Sky with a new studio album, and I was like, holy crap, Crack the Sky. Like, a band that I've kind of, checked out over the years, and a bunch of classic songs and whatnot. And
yeah, what year is it, right?
Yeah, I mean, is it amazing to think of how long you guys have been doing this? Like, and I guess my first question is, how do you keep the brotherhood and the group together to still enjoy making new music after all this time?
Well, it's really about the music. Keeping everybody together isn't that difficult because we all live far apart, so we don't see much of each other except when we're rehearsing or doing a gig.
Right.
But everybody gets along, so it's again, it's all about the music. I don't see you, Scott. I see Michael.
I don't see myself either. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, it's all right as long as.
I guess we'll just keep going. You don't have to see.
Scott's a man of mystery.
Yeah. You don't have to see my beautiful. You don't have to see my beautiful face. I guess I don't know what's going on.
No problem. Where are you calling from?
I'm in New Jersey, and Mike there is in Georgia.
Oh, okay, good.
So let me ask you. I mean, John, you've doing it for so long. You met up with Rick in 1973. You're just like jamming in like a record store, was it? And he heard you.
Yeah.
Like, how quickly did that kind of just
there I am
turn into like into what it has become now? I know you guys were in Uncle Louie for a bit before the.
You did your homework. That's fine.
Yeah.
It took a couple of years to really come together. He was really with another band, and what happened was I brought my music to him, and they never had any original writers. They were just obviously doing cover stuff. And I remember the first time when they actually played a couple of my songs, and that was a thrill for me. And I said, this would be a good thing to do, and enjoyed it. And we just kind of went on from there. Did, like you said, Uncle Louie, and did, cover stuff, just 3-piece, Joey D'Amico and me and Rick.
So, John, what's your background like as far as an early musician? Were you a kid who picked up a guitar and figured it out in the garage? Were you a kid who knew piano?
That's what I did. I'm not schooled at all. I had written, I traveled around the country. I just hitchhiked around after I quit college. And I kept a notebook.
No problem.
And I kept a notebook of all my writings, and then turned them into songs. And then, since I didn't know how to really play other people's stuff, I invented my own stuff, and that's how that came about.
No, let me ask you, do you think that you not being classically trained is or trained is what contributed to kind of, I feel like the word prog gets thrown around like, too much, but like your original style, your time signatures, and
sure.
And do you think that not being trained is what made that?
For me, I think so, because what happens if and I only speak for myself, if I were trained, I wouldn't have tried a lot of things, because in your head it's like, well, that won't work and that won't work. Right. Goes against
right. It's a way it's supposed to go, quote unquote.
Right. Yep.
So early on, as the band went along, you kind of cut off from them and did like a solo career. I'm kind of curious, how was that different? And when you broke off, did you feel you were going to get back with them eventually, or did you initially thought, all right, this is over?
No, when I left, I thought that's it. For me, that was it. Because there was pressure coming from the record company, and then they pressured the band, and the band started to pressure me, and it was all about a hit single, which, you can understand. But back then, my ego was so big that I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I left.
Now, what is it like, as a musician, you get the band together and your first album has, massive success. It seems to be an album people are discovering even now. It seems to be like one of these albums that, new generation, like, maybe myself, like, even since we set up this interview, I've been kind of going back and putting on the Spotify list on the way to work and all this stuff. What is it like, hitting that early success, and then I don't know if the good term is like chasing the dragon, but like trying to top that and get another successful album? Or were you guys able to just kind of, do what you wanted to do, or was there pressure to really make another album that was going to get that kind of?
Well, I think with anybody, the album got critical acclaim, but as far as selling, it didn't do that well. Right. There's a bunch of reasons for that. But I think that any band that wants to keep going has to keep reinventing yourself. And so that's what I tried to do, is with each album make it a little bit different, growing, always trying to grow. That's why I really liked Bowie, because it was
different. Yeah.
Album.
Yep.
Just to stretch and stretch and stretch. And so actually, Safety and Numbers did much better because they were with CBS. And then From the Greenhouse did better. White Music did better. And now we're hoping that this one does better.
You brought up something interesting where you have to keep on changing yourself. I mean, what is that process like? Do you guys just get together and go, okay, let's try for like classic rock sound or some jazz rock, or is it just literally you're in the studio and you're like, oh, this feels good?
No. We don't. We have a bizarre way of recording because we're all spread out. And what happens is 4 of us have studios. So I will record. I'll write the song, record my demo of it with everything that I think I'd like in it, and then send it to Rick. And Rick's got a studio, and so he and Bobby Hurt and Joey D'Amico, they get together more or less live in his studio, take my demo, what I sent, and then add to that their own bits.
Now, I'm curious. The new album coming out, we've been talking for the last year, almost a year now, to so many artists, not just music artists, but actors and artists in general, musicians and whatnot, about the pandemic has basically kicked live music and live performance out of the way. Was the pandemic like a way for you guys to start writing music? Like, did it actually help you be creative, or did it kind of shut you guys down completely?
Well, the only thing it shut down obviously was the live performance. I'm the writer, so it didn't affect me at all. I just kind of, I'm right here in my studio writing, and I try to write every day something. Doesn't mean I come up with anything, but I try to keep going. Sit down and do it. Yeah. And this record has, I think, I'm not sure, but I think 16 songs, and I just kept writing and writing, and we didn't feel like throwing anything out, so we just recorded them all.
Oh, that's awesome. With all your years of touring, I'm kind of curious, were you guys like once the concert's over, party till 6 a.m. in the morning, wake up and get to the next gig? Were you?
No. We maybe early on. Yeah, I should take that back. Early on, yeah, we did. Because we figured, well, that's what you do. And it was, I can't say it wasn't fun. It was a great time, but as we grew up and started seeing, the serious side of what we were trying to do, that kind of stopped. That doesn't mean we don't drink as a band after a show.
Right.
But, we don't do that.
Now, I mean, the amount of content and stuff you've put out is, there's so much out there, and you've gone through iterations of the band with horn sections and I don't know what the total number of pieces you had in the band at one point. You've gone to smaller sizes. What's the adjustment like when you go from the core of you guys to starting to introduce horns and introduce other things? Like, is that a hard thing to tour with and get together and get that on point, or are you basically able to bring in the horns and kind of give them direction immediately? Is that hard to do for you guys?
Sure, it's all charted out. But the core is the core,
right?
And if we decide, well, horns would be nice here, then we would we bring on horns. Strings too. We would do shows with completely acoustic and have strings there.
Nice.
Which is a beautiful thing. And now, like I said, the core is the core, and we just, whatever it takes to get what we want that's going to really complement the song, whether you're recording or live, that's what we do.
What about traveling with like a band that size? Is that is that mayhem? Like trying to organize that?
No, we don't travel with that.
Okay.
We will maybe in Baltimore, since we know so many musicians there, when we do something there, or in Annapolis, or there, we'll hire the guys that we know, and whether that's horn section or strings or both. Sometimes we use both.
Nice.
You kind of brought up something I wanted to talk about. You bringing up Baltimore. Everything I read is how huge the band is in that city. Have you ever been able to figure out what like clicked in that city versus anywhere else, or why you're so popular there for any reason?
What happened was all the pieces were together when the first album came out. So they had records in the stores. We had gotten airplay, and then we went to play live. And that was the only city where that happened. Distribution was a problem, so we would go to travel to other places, and there were no albums in the stores. Right. Promotion was a problem, and we would go there, and radio stations wouldn't have it or wouldn't play it for whatever reason. So Baltimore was one of those magical things where everything just came together at the same time. And they've stayed with us. I mean, it's great. You know, even though we've expanded now, going back to Baltimore is like going back home.
You know, like in 4 years, you're getting close to 50 years of making this music, and
it's scary.
Do you like? I'm curious about your perspective on the music industry and whatnot. Do you? I mean, I'm sure there's been ups and downs. But I'm curious with nowadays with you know, things like Spotify and streaming and whatnot. And in some ways, obviously, before all this live music coming kind of back in the fold, because that's where bands got to make their money. Like, are you able to look at the music industry with like a good feeling, or are you kind of upset with where it is right now?
Well, I've never had a good feeling about the music industry, so it's always been kind of bizarre and screwed up, and you know, in one way or the other. And this is just another step in the nonsense direction of, you know, people who know nothing about music and are running the show, right? And you know, so it's not a surprise to me. And actually, I don't even get upset about it, because again, I would stop if I wasn't enjoying myself.
Now, do you find with streaming and the ability to, hey, I could pull up Crack the Sky right now and dive into their, you know, are you finding that you're connecting to younger and newer fans all the time? Like, do you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And a lot of that's got to do with the record company, and they're really on top of that much more than I am. I don't even listen to my stuff. Really, I don't. It's, once I'm done with a record, or we're done with a record, I never hear it again.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not interested, because I know what happened.
Yeah. Well, that's like my comedy sets. I literally cannot listen to them.
You're a comedian. That's great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was before the pandemic. You know, it's
right. Sure. Right. You do it for yourself now, right?
Yeah. It's listening to my sets is. I'll do it to see if like there's something there's a joke there that I like, or like if there's beats in the joke that I think should be taken out or lengthened. But like, I hear my voice and I'm like, I hate this. Like, I hate all of this. I have to just step away after.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, after maybe like one listen through, pick out the pieces, and then that's the end. I never pull it up again.
Right. Once I listen to a test pressing or a final mix or something, there's no real reason that I can figure out to listen anymore. It's irritating to me. You know, it's time to move on. It's, you know, that's done. That's finished. Right. I know what went into it, which is wonderful. And love the process. I love the process of writing and recording. And so I know what happened, and you can't relive that.
Right.
Yeah, I can't anyway. And so I just leave it.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You guys have been on and off, like as Scott said, for close to 50 years now. I'm just kind of curious, what kind of persuades you guys to get back together? Does somebody say, I got an idea or something like that? Is it true from what I read up that one time your group got back together because somebody needed dental work?
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah. I was done, and we were all done. And I I got my doctorate, and I was doing. I had patients. You know, I was seeing patients as a psychologist, and John Tracy came to my house and said, I have a favor, you know, and he needed like massive dental work, and which is very expensive. And he said, you know, could we do a couple shows?
That's awesome.
We said, sure. And then we did the shows, and then we said, this is too much fun to leave alone. So then we put it back together.
Did you hold them all? Be like, you better be smiling at every show,
right.
show after that.
Let's see what we bought. Right.
No, let me ask you. With so much content and years, when you go to play a live show, how do you put a set list together? As far as like, okay, I got old fans to address, I got new fans, I got new stuff I'm working on. Like, what is the process of like how do you even choose that?
Well, we know that we're entertainers first. That's what, you know, people are paying, and they want to hear what they know. And so, because I know when I go to a concert, I want to hear Peter Gabriel do Salisbury Hill.
Yeah.
Even Sledgehammer, you know.
Right.
But when you're trying to do something new, it's like, I don't know how it goes. It's kind of like put me to sleep. Yeah,
like we want to hear a couple new songs, but we want to hear the stuff that we know you for too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And that's the mindset we use when putting a show together.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like with 50 years of stuff, it's got to be like
there's a lot, right?
Like, have you forgotten more than you remember as far as your own songs?
I used an iPad on stage because I can't remember those lyrics.
Not only that, your guys' stuff is like super technical. So I imagine if you're not playing it, like it's got to go away like a little bit, like the timing and whatnot.
Well, yeah, we rehearse hard before we go out and get ready to go. Yeah.
But all this time of touring, who is the most amazing person you feel that you got to perform with or share the concert stage with, and who's somebody that you wish you could have performed with?
Zappa was probably the most amazing. Just the way the whole production was put together, not visual production, but just the control that he had over his band and how tight they were and how unbelievably you want to talk about complex stuff. I mean, they would jump around time signatures and he had it. I mean, he knocked me out. Who would I wish? I guess
Bowie would be a good one. You mentioned Bowie.
Bowie would have been great. Yeah, yeah. Maybe that. Maybe Bowie. Maybe Yes. King Crimson. Solid. Yeah.
King Crimson. Oh God, yeah.
Right.
So let me ask you. I played in bands back, a little bit back in the day, bass player, whatnot, and the when people asked you like what genre are you, it was always like an awkward question and whatnot. And I feel like the word prog could be kind of forgiving, but it could also be kind of like, like I'm not, we're not the as crazy technical. Like people have.
We're not prog. I don't
think so either.
No, I consider us a rock and roll band.
Me too.
That's
well, you kind of beat me to the. That's kind of what I was going to ask you. Like,
no. We played a couple of prog festivals, and it was really bizarre because.
I think of like Tool as a classical prog band, like that. Right. To me, they're like the genre I think about when I think of prog. You guys, I don't think so. I think you're a rock and roll band that is also experimental.
Yeah, we just again, I think that we're entertaining. We're a rock and roll band that doesn't do just straight ahead rock and roll. There's a lot of movement in what we do.
Yep.
And lyrically, very creative with regard to subject matter and all that.
Well, let's get to the new album. Let's get to the. So, what is there a concept to the new album? What can fans expect, and what could, if there's someone listening to this right now and they're like, I got to check it out. Like, what can they expect from this new album?
Well, there's no concept. I mean, there's it's kind of an observation. Some of the songs are sort of an observation, and some are just really done for a good time, and some are done to show off, and so I think that the feedback that we're getting on it is that a lot of people are saying this is the best thing since the first album, which is kind of scary to me,
It's a great compliment,
It's a heck of a compliment.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is a compliment, but it's like, you mean the first album, and it's like, oh, okay. How old are you?
Or it could be like, oh, so you hated the other 48 years,
Right, exactly, yeah. But yeah, that's the kind of feedback that we're getting so far.
That's awesome.
And it's very early, so I'm holding I hold my water for that. See what happens.
That's awesome.
Obviously, we're still going through this pandemic thing. Is there plans to do a couple tour dates with the album release, or is it just pretty much release the album right now?
Well, right now, there's no plan because you have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, it's, somebody says summertime, somebody says nothing until next year, with regard to what's going to open up. And so we try to keep, kind of aware of what's going on. Right now, I'm writing an acoustic album.
Awesome.
So we're... planning it out would be ridiculous, I think.
That's awesome.
It's like, it would be frustrating. That's probably a better word. It would be very frustrating. Plan it out, figure out what you're going to do, figure out where you're going to go, and then sit there.
Yeah. I feel like, though, you're not alone in that boat. I feel like a lot of artists of any kind of entertainment right now are doing, they're putting it out there, and like, God, one day I hope, I hope I'm able to support this album and get back out in front of people.
Well, yeah, because the normal thing is to put the record on and support it, Can't do that.
Well,
very bizarre times we're going through.
Yeah. Well, you gotta keep the faith and hope it's, this is going to pass, and we'll be back watching Crack the Sky live. But
thank you,
John. This has been a real pleasure. I gotta admit, like, I saw the email come out, and it kind of took me into a flashback. Oh my God! Like, I remember listening. I remember I had a friend who was really into Crack the Sky when we were starting bands and whatnot. And I'm like, oh my God! And I've kind of been doing a deep dive again, like, hitting the random button on Spotify and getting different songs of yours. So
right.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and I'm so happy you guys.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and you too, Mike.
Yeah, and I'm so happy you guys are able to still make music. I think that's really cool, and I hope you got 5 more albums, it coming out.
I hope we have them, yeah.
Why not? John, last thing, if people want to go check out the album or they want to go see what Crack the Sky is up to, where should they go?
I would imagine go to Carry On Music, or our website, crackthesky.com. That's easy enough. That's where you do it.
Awesome.
And it's on all the servers too,
Yep,
iTunes.
it's on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. Yeah. John, thank you so much. Stay safe and keep making awesome music, man.
Thank you very much. You stay safe too.
All right, Mike. John Palumbo, Crack the Sky.
Scott, now, quick question. When you talked about those 100 years worth of music between our last 2 guests, did you also equate my time in junior high as a trumpet player, factoring all this time of music genius between everybody on the show?
All right, so 103 years of great music experience. 103 years. Sorry.
Thank you. Hot Cross Buns is still a classic. I'm sorry.
I got to play Hot Cross Buns in a trumpet solo in 5th grade.
solo.
Solo.
Like, so what's the setup? Is it like the whole band is there and you stand up and you do it, or they just send you up on stage by yourself and you're doing hot cross buns?
So the whole band plays a couple little ditties, a couple little warm up tracks, and they're like, "Well, let's bring out the big bopper here."
Mm-hmm, the fifth graders are like, "This is nice, but we want the real show. Come on, let's do this."
Yep, and they bring out. They're like, now playing a solo hot cross buns. Scott Brennan, and just like the roar of the crowd. I had to calm them down for a little while. I was like, guys, relax. I'll sign stuff after I'm done. Just let me get through this song. And bam, right away, bam, 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 and it's like the roar of the crowd. And I think I threw my trumpet out to the crowd that night. It was like they carried me off. The way I remember it was so cool.
Were you doing like kind of like Hendrix did with like the national anthem, where you just like adding some extra notes in there, just like changing around the rhythm and the style to make hot cross buns your own? Yeah.
Well, before I threw my trumpet to the crowd, I smashed it on the ground and then put lighter fluid on it, lit it on fire, and did the like whole. The dance Jimi Hendrix did, made it go on fire, and the crowd was.
And then you were playing it while it was on fire, which was insane.
Oh yeah, and when I hit those like high E notes, I was blowing flames out of the end. It was unbelievable, man. Honestly.
Yeah, it looked like that guitarist from Mad Max, just flames shooting everywhere, and like everybody's like, "This is awesome!" And then poor Timmy had to go up and
twinkle, twinkle, little star. Come on.
Come on. He's up there like with his flute, and everybody's like, "Well, what is this?"
It's still referred to. The
show ended.
It's at Woodbine Elementary School in Avenel, New Jersey. It's still referred to as hottest cross buns the night. It was like the best,
easily.
Yeah. So I
mean, I was watching VH1 and I saw the behind the music as they talked about that night. It was just so epic and all. Like, is it true you got like really drunk on apple juice the night before and you weren't sure if you're going to play?
The fermented apple juice I've been having in the, left in my room for a couple weeks. Yeah, I was loaded, man. I don't even remember much of it. That's why, like, now when I'm telling the story, like, some of the details are like a little fuzzy, and it kind of sounds like I'm making them up because I'm just grabbing pieces that I remember.
Well, I do remember, like, your stage manager. It was your father at the time. Like, he kicked down the door, and he's like, "What are you doing, man? The crowd needs hot cross buns." And you were kind of out of it, and you two were fighting. I heard some fists through that night, even.
Listen, there's things that I would like to talk about and things that I don't really like to talk about. And I think kind of you're crossing the line with that interview question a little bit.
Well, I'm sorry, man. VH1 put it out there. It's not my fault. I told you to make me the editor of the VH1 special, but no.
Listen,
you had to go with the people who knew how to edit.
People will believe anything that you write and put out in the media, and like at this time, I'm not really willing to talk about it. So can we move on, please?
All right. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to stay on music for a little bit. And do you remember the band Trapt?
Yes.
With their hit song "Headstrong," I believe it was.
Headstrong, I take you on, but anyone. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, of all ways, Trapt came back into my life. I didn't think I would see a headline like this. Report: Trapt holding tryouts for racist with drumming experience.
One of our former guests wrote that article. My friend Steve Aspara wrote that article. It's a
small world.
Yeah, it's like a Onion-esque article.
Okay. Well, there have been reports of them actually like being kind of on the right wing, if you will.
Yes.
They basically got knocked off of. I think it was Facebook or Twitter, because basically the lead singer of the band was like fighting back against people on there about certain conservative things, and I believe he also said at one point George Floyd is the reason why George Floyd got.
Yeah, he got into all sorts of like Twitter hell, like combating people and whatnot.
But their drummer did quit like 3 weeks ago because he just couldn't take all this kind of right-wing stuff. And
it was too headstrong.
Yeah. So apparently the quote from the front man, Chris Taylor Brown, F that little pansy soy boy, I'll say wussy. My band is looking for a badass, free-thinking individual who doesn't believe what the lamestream media tries to force-feed us.
Right.
If there is one thing Trapt refuses to do, which I didn't know Trapt refuses to do anything when you're trapped, the same soundbite over and over. We need a drummer who stands up to the tyranny and advocates for stripping basic human rights from anyone who tries coming into my country illegally. We can teach a person to drum. We can't teach them how to view the world correctly.
Listen, Kid Rock's not getting any younger, man. Someone's got to take that mantle for the next, when Trump wins in 2024. You know, like someone's got to open up the inauguration.
But I would turn around to this. Kid Rock is still Kid Rock. Like, there's still, like, people know he's a conservative, but I still feel there is love for him, and I don't feel he did, like, enough, like anti-democratic things or stuff like that where people has had hate for him or anything like that. When you're Trapt, you don't really have the options of gaining a crowd nowadays.
No, yeah, they're trying. Obviously, he's trying to like maybe like find a niche audience that's sitting there. Like maybe he can get that. Like he would go really well if they played the reunion of the Capitol rioters. Like if a couple years from now, they're like, yeah, we're having like a dance, and live entertainment by Trapt. Like it'd be huge.
Now, that not be bad, because I just saw a recent video of how the old Washington Stadium, RFK, is still standing. I mean, that's got to get demolished someday. That would be the perfect end to that stadium. Like a concert like that where all the insurrectionists are just in the middle of the stadium, just and just ripping the maroon and yellow seats out of the stadium.
That guy in the buffalo head, just like leading doing like the opening prayer. Daniel Snyder there, like woo, like we love this.
Everybody saying, "Bring back the old name, bring back the old name."
Yeah. I think it's perfect.
I think it would work and all. I mean, it would tarnish the legacy of the DC United that played there, but still.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I guess there's room for bands like that too. I mean, I guess for every extreme left band, there's got to be an extreme right band. The balance and the force.
I always wonder, like, some of these bands that, like, maybe had that one hit. I'm not even, like, calling them, say, like, one-hit wonders, because there's been, like, real one-hit wonders.
Oh, yeah, we've had a bunch on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like Who Let the Dogs Out. Like, that was a legit, everybody knew that song.
Brian Vandermark.
Headstrong was probably, like, top 10 in alternative.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how some of these bands are still like, nah, this is our vision, this is our goal, give it or take it to get that cocky. It's kind of like when I remember I saw the Ozfest documentary, and the Osbournes talked about that band Crazy Town. You remember the Butterfly song?
I know, because I saw them. Not because I went to see them. We went to, back when the Birch Hill was still a venue in, was that in East Brunswick? Whatever. It was my favorite venue. We went to some kind of music festival, me and my brother, when he was working in the music industry. And sure enough, there they were, Crazy Town, playing. It was them and because my brother was working for Seven Dust at the time, the band Seven Dust.
That's a great band.
Yeah, and they were just like on the bill, and they were playing, and just basically everyone was just waiting for the dumbass song, "You're my sugar fly, baby, baby," And it was as bad as you imagine, and I was like 16, so. It was that bad.
And then, like, the Osbournes kind of talked about, like, they joined the tour and they thought they were, like, the hottest thing ever. They thought, like, that song was like, all right, that's a stepping stone, and it's like, no, that's the plateau.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how some of these bands like overthink their one hit, if you will.
Well, it's like you see that in every entertainment, right? You see you see the Carlos Mencias of the world, in comedy, like where he thought that crappy fake Mexican act was going to carry him through. Now he's still apologizing to people, or not apologizing for stealing jokes, and just he's like a German guy named Ned, like he's not even Mexican. So like that hack stuff, yeah, you got fame for a year or two, and everyone blasted 1,000 bullets into your story, and now you are just, you're just crawling for any kind of attention, and no one's ever going to take you. That's why, taking the fame might be a good thing at the time, but a lot of times, if it's not genuine, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, the gauge I kind of use is if you bring up somebody's name, and I can say I could probably get them on the show with one tweet, that you messed up. Like, you were famous, but you messed up. Like most of our guests, I'm like, all right, I might have to do a little work to find them and get to them and all, but there's just a certain few. It's like, yeah. Like, I think I can get trapped on Purple Shenanigans sometime.
Yeah, well, next week we've been teasing a big episode, so should we tell them now?
I mean, why'd you have to give such a hint like that? I mean, at least don't tell them that I'm going to be their new soy boy drummer. Okay?
I mean, we have
cut this out,
guys. Next week we have Trapt with Carlos Mencia. It's the weirdest interview ever, but I mean, it's going to be really cool. I mean, they
do Headstrong with a Mexican accent. It's amazing.
And they go da-da-da, like over and over again, and it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's gonna.
Yeah, and I didn't want to say this, but then like halfway through, like Crazy Town just walks up and just starts getting into the beat with Butterfly along with Headstrong.
And then Butter Bean comes back too. It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't know it because he only says one word in a half an hour, but he's there.
I kind of feel like he only said one word in like every minute because he was exhausted from saying the word before. Like that guy, he did not look in good shape when we interviewed him. But Burlo, before we go, it's been snowing nonstop in New Jersey, like a lot, which I kind of like. I think snow is always kind of fun, but like when you get a snow day, there's still like nostalgia to it, like if you get the day off from work, snow days are like the greatest thing ever. You're like, I'm going to have a beer at 1:00. I'm going to watch a movie, like I'm going to, shovel for a little bit. Did you have any like snow day superstitions when you were a kid?
My biggest superstition was they were going to cancel. Where the school district South Brunswick we were at, we had for a couple years a dude that was from Alaska, and I kid you not when I say every county that completely circles South Brunswick, all of them would be closed, and they would send us in every time.
Oh man!
And it was pure misery because you would have to wait out in the snow for the bus, and it would take an extra 30, 40 minutes. You would get into school. None of the teachers are there, so all you're doing is watching a movie or studying. And it was like the biggest waste of a day humanly possible. And it kind of reminds me of a time, like, my dad got, like, super pissed at me. And also, like, I think it was, like, my senior year, and they were doing the announcements for the school closings. And I don't know why, but they kept on doing it out of order where it wasn't perfectly alphabetical.
But was there anything better than getting that, like hearing that Woodbridge Township is closed? And you're like, oh my God. Like, was there anything better than that?
Oh, that is a great feeling because they said South Brunswick. I'm like, day off. Go back to bed. My mom comes in, start getting ready. I'm like, no, they said they were closed. She's like, I didn't hear it. And then every time they would say it, not even a joke, they would be out of the room or something like that where they didn't hear it. And then I was getting anxious. I'm going back and forth with my mom, and I guess my dad didn't appreciate it or whatever. So he got uber pissed. He like picked me up from my sleeve and all. He's like, "You're getting ready." And I went outside and I waited in the snow for like 30 minutes. And I'm quietly cursing out my dad because if he heard me, he'd kick my ass. And then after like a half an hour, he's like, "The bus didn't come. I'm driving you to school." And I'm like, why are you proving this point? And also a little addition to that was my mom finally heard South Brunswick, and my dad was so riled up, he wouldn't listen to her.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
He got so pissed off. And so we're doing like 10 miles an hour down the road, snow, ice, whatever. I'm just sitting in the car. I'm biting my lip because I know if I say something, I'm going to get whacked. And we pull up to the school, and there's just one guy there. It's just like, school's closed. And we drive back, and I had to keep it in because I'm like, if I let loose, I'm not going to stop it. And then the only way it's going to stop is my dad smacking me, and I don't want that. So and then my mom tried to be cute when I laid down and I was frustrated. And she's like, school's closed. I'm like,
that's great. But I was wondering so I went over some superstitions that people have about like calling a snow day.
Okay.
Did you ever have a PJ party, Mike, where kids were going to wear your pajamas inside out and backwards in the hopes that Mother Nature will reward them with a snowstorm?
That doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'm going to say no, Scott.
Well, what doesn't make sense about wearing your pajamas inside out? Of course that's going to bring snow.
Anything about it? Any logic?
All right, Mike, fine. If that's not logical for you, this next one is pretty logical. Okay. Did you ever sleep with a spoon under your pillow in hopes that Mother Nature will pay a visit instead of the tooth fairy? So if you put a spoon under your pillow, there will be a snow day.
Like, wouldn't it be like a shovel under your pillow? Wouldn't that be?
I feel like it would be uncomfortable to sleep.
I don't think a spoon is that much better. I mean,
you're telling me you'd rather sleep with a shovel under your pillow than a spoon?
If I really think I'm going to get a day off, hell yeah, I'll bring in that snow shovel and cuddle up next to it.
I picture you like sleeping on a shovel. They're like. The next day, you're like, my back.
I gotta go to school. My neck hurts.
Yeah. You get to school. My back hurts so bad. Mike, I could see you doing this one, knowing your past and your weird habit. Flushing ice cubes down the toilet for every inch of snow wanted. Okay, so if you wanted 1 inch of snow, you'd put 1 ice cube in the toilet. If you wanted 2 inches, you'd put 2 in. And I feel like knowing how you have this weird thing about melting ice, maybe this is more up your alley.
Well, I'd never done it in the toilet. I mean, I like to do it in the sink where I turn on the faucet and then I can gauge, like take care of pieces of ice and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious, like, because like kids in Buffalo, they need about 2 feet for school.
24 hours. It'd be funny.
So, there's some fathers like, why's the toilet clogged again?
It'd be funny if they have to, they only had 1 ice cube tray, so they freeze 12, and they got to wait for another 2 hours and get the other ice cube tray out,
Then meanwhile, that's melted, so it's like, got to start from scratch again.
Yeah, I mean, have you had any more experience with them melting ice? Has this come back at all recently, your weird, strange addiction?
Not really. Like, the only time it happens is once in a blue moon. It's like I go into our freezer and I go, okay, the ice tray is completely full from the ice maker, so dump it all out and
yes. Mike, you could put a white crayon on your windowsill.
Okay,
that brings snow. That brings snow. White crayon, which is basically the most useless crayon in the box.
Point taken.
Yep. So maybe tonight, you should see if that happens.
I don't know how Georgia will react with snow. We lucked out that we didn't get any. I mean, the last big snow they had, it was like 7 years ago where they got like 10 inches. And from everything I heard, people literally just like parked their cars in the middle of the road and just walked home. Like literally just left in the middle of the road. They didn't, no cops came around, nothing. It's just like your car would be on the middle of I-75 and you're walking back like the REM video.
Nice. Well, you could wear plastic bags over your socks and your shoes the day before. That's supposed to work.
It sounds like one of my grandma's cold remedies. Like she put onions in the socks.
She was one of those onion people? I've heard that before.
Yeah, it was onions in the socks for a flu or cold. And I think it was for a cold. And for the flu, it'd be a spoonful of sugar with a drop of kerosene in it. Yeah. And like
kerosene.
If my dad's friends came over and they started coughing, she would force it on them, so they didn't want to get anywhere near her when they were sick.
It's weird how the whole neighborhood died of lung cancer that year, but
nobody died of the flu though. That's the key thing.
It's funny because like we're putting all this money into vaccines and everything for COVID. All we needed was your grandma with her onions and her kerosene, and this would have been taken care of in 2 seconds.
None of that kung flu would have happened with old Grandma Mariva. That's all I know.
Sleep backwards with your feet at the top of your bed. You could eat a ton of ice cream, perform a snow dance, brush your teeth with your opposite hand and sleep with one sock on. And then the last one, Mike, is stick your head in the freezer and yell snow day.
Okay, there's starting to sound like some disorders here, a couple of these, to be brutally honest.
Right. Right.
Like some of them are kind of cute, like eating the ice cream or whatever, but when you're like screaming in your freezer and then dumping 12 ice cubes in your toilet, I kind of question your mentality on life.
Maybe you should combine those things and just be like keep like frozen kerosene treats for your friends that come over and you know, like have one dose them basically. Give them a nice little kerosene treat for the snow day.
Ooh, that'd be nice and all. I mean, we haven't had company in a while. I mean, that'd be a good way to start a party.
Oh, you got a cheese plate, you got some charcuterie, and you got to try the kerosene bites. They're unbelievable.
I got the good stuff. Sunoco, amazing.
Topped with a little gasoline aioli. You know, it's beautiful. But anyway, Mike,
don't smoke.
It is time to go. Anything to promote before we roll on out of here?
I'm going to promote. This is something that came by in the newswire. There's a couple of ladies who on Facebook started a Facebook page called New Jersey COVID Vaccine Info with a lot of people having problems figuring out where they can go to get their shots and whatever. My parents are very lucky. They just got their second shot. So happy for them. We're going to see them right before they go to Florida. But I know there's been a lot of turmoil out there in different states. But these people, there's over 47,000 people on this site out there waiting to help people, show them the way to get their shot. So go on Facebook and look for the group New Jersey COVID Vaccine Info if you need any help for yourself or a loved one that needs to get their vaccine.
Awesome. And I'm going to promote former guest of ours, two-time guest of ours, one of the most, arguably the best bassist I've ever seen. And, you know, in honor of Leland Sklar coming on last week and telling us he knows him, Victor Wooten is putting out a book. It is now available for order. It's called The Spirit of Music. Victor Wooten, if you just type that into YouTube and watch him play the bass, it'll make you take your bass and burn it in the fire in the backyard. But he is one of the coolest guys we've had on this show. Till this day, it's such an honor to have him on. We had him on twice. So go order Victor's The Spirit of Music. Guys, with that, please just share the podcast with your friends. Like us on social media. Just tell us how to figure out the algorithm. That would be nice. We have a really big episode next week. But before that, I want to thank John Palumbo for coming on. And other than that, guys, life is funny. Laugh at it. Keep the wind at your back. Peace.
We'll be seeing you next week.
This is Mike's last show.